Hello everyone, this is Jason as Dr. Gaming Plays, and we are now at the end of 2023. Now, as we are all aware, 2023 was a banner year for JRPG gaming releases and gaming in general. However, this is not what this list is about. This list is about what I actually played in 2023. Now, if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and also hit the subscribe button. And if you want to be notified when new videos go up, please also hit the bell icon. Anyways, without further ado, let's get on to what I played in 2023. So, the first game on this list is Trails in the Sky the Third. Now, if I had been making videos in 2022, Trails in the Sky SC would have been my game of the year, so this game had a lot to live up to. While it doesn't quite hit the high marks that Trails in the Sky SC did for me, I did really enjoy my time with this game. So Trails in the Sky the Third serves as a wrap-up of the first two Sky games. It does introduce some storylines and elements for upcoming games. In a way, you can think of the game as a sequel in the past and a prequel of sorts to future games. Instead of having Estelle and Joshua Bright as the main characters, the story centers around Kevin Graham and Reese Argent as new protagonists. Unlike many other games in the series where you hop from various territories and cities, this game largely takes place in the ethereal realm called the Phantasma, a realm that is a consequence of what happened in Trails of Sky SC. It would probably be fair enough to call this game more of a dungeon crawler, though that would be a bit of an oversimplification. Contained within this realm are doors, sun, moon, and star, that have side stories or a mini-game. While optional, it is important to traverse the story-related doors as they cover events that happen in between the second and third game, and some events foreshadow things that will happen later in the series. While only mentioned by name in the first two games, you will be introduced to a certain infamous character, and I will leave it at that. Going through the doors and playing through the events help flesh this game out. This game also introduces the higher elements during battle, and you'll need to cleverly manipulate the battle timeline so your party has an advantage instead of the enemy. Now, some will say that this game can be skipped and you can go from Sky SC right into the Crossbell arc. While that is possible, you will miss out on some of the story elements and character development arcs that continue in later games. Also, this game is pretty fun and has a major feature where one can warp around from dungeon to dungeon or doors at will. With the ability to save anywhere, these are great features to anyone that likes JRPGs but has limited time. Now, one of the barriers to playing Trails in the Sky the Third, as well as the two other games in the Sky Arc, is that the localized versions are only available on the PC. Now, Trail fans in the West have been clamoring for these three games to get released on the consoles like the Nintendo Switch, or a successor, or PlayStation consoles. And while I would like to see that happen, and I believe I've heard that Falcom is at least aware of this interest, there are a number of barriers to overcome for that to happen, and I don't think it's really likely. Now, one of the major obstacles to getting these games onto consoles, at least in the West, the English translation rights are owned by another gaming company, Xseed. So while I'm sure Falcom is aware of the interest to having these games on consoles, it's very unlikely that as a small company, they're going to hire their own translation team to do their version of that. And I don't see a situation where Xseed would actually sell the rights to Nissa, simply because Xseed does still sell these games in the PC and are probably at this point making a profit on them. But hey, anything could happen. We never thought we would get the two Crossbell games, and so those are the two games that are next on my list of what I played. Now, while I reviewed both games in another video, I want to touch base on them again. A link to that review will be given in the video description below. Trails from Zero takes place several months after Trails from the Sky the Third, and early events of the game take place before the start of Trails of Cold Steel. The game introduces a new set of characters and takes place largely in the city-state of Crossbell and the surrounding area. Instead of a duo protagonist, the story centers around a unit created by the Crossbell State Police Department called the Special Support Section, consisting of 4 characters: Lloyd Bannies, Ellie McDowell, Teo Plato, and Rainy Orlando. In your early missions, you would get a sense of deja vu, as these missions are like the Bracer Guild missions from the first two games of the Sky Arc. They aren't given much respect in the start of the game, but they earn it throughout the course of both games. A couple of other characters are added to the Special Support Section team in the second game. Gameplay-wise, these games are more iterative of the Sky Arc. There are various new elements added like the combination attacks in the first game and the burst mode in the second game. The orbit system has also had some refinements, including the introduction of Master Quartz in the second game, something that should be familiar to those who have played the Cold Steel games. While these games were first released in the PSP in Japan when they were ported to the Vita, again only in Japan, the graphics did get a facelift compared to the Sky trilogy. While the characters are still 2D sprites that move around in the 3D environment, the camera follows the characters around more dynamically, rather than being restricted mostly top and bottom and side to side as in the Sky trilogy. Now don't let that description deter you from playing these games. Out of the games I have played in this series, this duology of games excel in their pacing. The first game focuses on the crossbell problems, and the second game, those problems are well fit into a larger story narrative. The story arcs of the playable characters are really fleshed out, and this is probably helped by the fact that this game focuses on a smaller cast, rather than the sprawl of characters that we get in later games. Crossbell, as a technology and trade center that is sandwiched between two major world powers, allows for plenty of political intrigue and corruption to make its way into the story. Are you a fantasy buff? Yes, there is plenty of that too, and all these elements are put together very well. I did have some issues with a few things from Trails to Azure, and I will stand by those criticisms. Having said that though, I really enjoyed my time with both games. After playing through several Trails games in a row dating back to late 2021, I was due for a break. While I was reading through Witch on the Holy Night, I also decided to finally start my journey with Breath of the Wild. First, I know many of you will argue that Zelda games are not JRPGs and don't belong on this list. While I can see that stance from the earlier games, though even Zelda 2 has towns and an experience system, I think we are going to have to agree to disagree on that stance, especially with the latest two entries in the series. At the very least, they heavily borrow from action JRPGs. In addition to improving your health and stamina, which directly ties into your ability to run and climb, there is a complex crafting system that allows you to make items and boost your abilities. As a departure from earlier games in the series, these games are open world like the Elder Scrolls and Fallout games. There are villages and waypoints with many NPCs, some of which have their own side quests for you to do. These elements push these games into the role-playing genre, and calling them simple action games with some puzzles to solve is an oversimplification. So, confession time. When Breath of the Wild originally came out, I did not have a Switch at the time, and even when I did eventually get one, this game sat on my play pile for quite some time. I was heavily into other JRPG series for a while, and knowing that Breath of the Wild is a major time commitment and a big departure from other entries, I was hesitant to start it. With Tears of the Kingdom arrival this year, I thought it was time to stop procrastinating and give Breath of the Wild a try. After the intro, the first thing I did was to locate every tower that I could find that was level appropriate and solve as many shrines as I could that didn't have a complicated side quest to boost my health and stamina. By boosting those as much as possible, it allows you to explore more, leading to better weapons and armor. I really like the crafting system as it allows you to make items that can temporarily boost your stats and allows you to poke your nose into places that would otherwise be a bit too much for your current level of play. As much as I enjoy turn-based RPGs, I do like to play games that give me more freedom to explore things in pretty much any order that I would like, and I found myself immersed in many times in the Breath of the Wild's world. That also comes with the downside though, because like a tendency to wander in Elder Scrolls games, that wanderlust of many hours sometimes gets me in the way of completing the game's main objectives. That happened to me in Breath of the Wild as well. There's still quite a bit for me to do, and I see this as a game that I'll go back to for a while, take a break, and then maybe come back to it. I guess that is okay though, as I will certainly get more than my money's worth before all's said and done. After taking a break from the Trail series, I decided to hop back in with the third game in the Cold Steel arc. I had already played the first two games to start my Trails journey before going back to the older games. It took me a bit to get into it, but that was largely due to the fact that time had passed since I had played the first two games in the Erebonian arc. Now, if you were a little frustrated by the slow burn of the first game in this arc, things do get moving much faster in the third game. There's a bump up in the graphics as well, since this game was originally released as a PS4 exclusive in Japan, before it was ported to other consoles and saw a broader release. Like the first two games, the art style borrows heavily from shonen anime, especially with the design of the characters in the game and with the cutscenes. Instead of being a student, Rin is now an instructor with the branch campus of Thor's military academy, teaching the next generation of Class 7 students. While I can't put my finger in the exact reason, the pacing is not as good as, say, the Crossbell arc, and this may be partially due to the fact there are so many characters in the game. In addition to the new Class 7, there's the old Class 7, and then you have some characters tossed in from earlier arcs. The problem with so many characters is that many of them aren't given a chance to develop, and with the exception of one, I felt that the characters introduced in the earlier games prior to the Erebonian arc were not given much to do. One of the new characters that was introduced as one of Rin's students does have a better character development arc, as you spend a fair amount of time in the place where this character is from, and the story does deal with some of the inner conflict that she feels. New to the battle system are brave orders, which used correctly can change the tide of battle, so it can make dealing with game bosses easier. I felt that sometimes it can make it easier to cheese your way through a boss battle, but I don't know, maybe after so many hours into the game, having the easier path at the end isn't too bad either. I'm probably leaving you with the impression that I didn't like Cold Steel 3. That is not the case, as I did enjoy my time playing it, but for me it doesn't hit the highs of the Sky SC or the Crossbell arc. But still, I have two games to go through plus Trails of Daybreak in the summer, so we'll see. So with Trails of Cold Steel 3, that brings a total of 4 games from the Trails series that I played in 2023. And at this point I was ready to try something different and take another break from the series. And that brings me to the next game on my list, Blue Reflection. So, what would happen if you wanted to make a game where most of the battles take place in a collective consciousness, relies on bonding events like Persona to strengthen your character's bonds and stats, borrows its art direction from the Atelier games, and swaps out fan themes for magical girls? Well, you may end up with Blue Reflection by Gust as a result. This game has been recommended by a number of YouTubers that I've watched, but I was pretty hesitant to try it. While I don't completely dislike the magical girl anime genre, it is not something I seek out either. I also have to admit that the lack of English voices was a bit of a downer too, though I'm getting over that. However, towards the end of the year, I was looking for something easier to play and something I actually finish without putting 60 to 70 hours into it. So I decided to give Blue Reflection a try, and I have to admit, I came away pleasantly surprised for the most part. You control protagonist Hanako Shenrei as she re-entered the world of high school following an accident that has left her unable to continue with ballet, an activity that was central to her character. She shortly meets up with 2 other girls Yuzu and Line and discovers that she is a reflector that can enter the world known as the Common, pretty much a collective consciousness that can represent different emotions. The 3 of them help out the other girls deal with negative feelings by entering the Common and battling off demons. The battle system is flashy, though it quickly gets somewhat tedious, and that it is too easy. Your health and magic points are completely restored after every battle, so there isn't much incentive to conserve magic points. You will have to battle these demons though to collect ingredients, and some of the ingredients are harvested in the Common. These are used to make items that can buff up stats and strengthen fragments that you obtain from the other girls, and this should be familiar to Atelier fans. Now, I made mention of creating bonds with other characters, but it is not at the same level as Persona games, not even close. Most of these are superficial, and the development of some of them can get quite tedious. Also, this game definitely has fan service. To a certain extent, that is to be expected, but there is some later in the game that kind of crosses over into creepy territory. I'm sure those of you that have played this game probably know what I'm talking about. This game itself is chill though. There are no major time limit pressures and the world is presented well, even though it was developed on a small budget. I also really liked the music too and found it overall an enjoyable experience. As we are now at the end of the year, I was still looking to play a game that did not involve a significant time investment, as I was not ready to go back into the Trails series yet. Death End Request is a game that I've seen mentioned on some YouTube channels as one that is sometimes overlooked. However, given my initial impression, I may not be spending that much more time with it. To be clear, this is an Idea Factory compile heart game, and those games are not known for their high quality, although this is one of their better rated games. One of the central characters, Shinya, is mysteriously disappeared and wakes up trapped in a bugged out version of a virtual MMORPG called World's Odyssey that she herself created along with some others. The idea is that her physical body is somewhere, but she is trapped in the game until she can complete it. She's able to make contact with one of the other developers, Arata, to help in the real world. By joining other NPCs to help in her battle, the goal is to reach game end without getting killed off. As you progress through the game while you're controlling Sheena, it plays like a turn-based role-playing game. The battle system is actually pretty clever. You can knock enemies around the board, and as they run into computer glitch bugs that are around the floor, they take additional damage. If that enemy runs into one of your other teammates, that character will strike it for more bonus damage. If an enemy hits another enemy, both take damage. You can also step on the glitches yourself, which powers up the corruption level of that character while taking damage. As that character takes on more corruption, she enters glitch mode and can deal massive damage to the enemy. Now, I wish I could say that the monster and level design are as interesting. The monster design is pretty bland with little animation, although it's a little bit better with bosses. The levels can look like they came out of a budget PS2, PS3 game. This is an area where they clearly didn't have enough of a budget to work with. When you play as Atri, it switches to a visual novel format, and how this is handled is pretty clunky. The story itself isn't too bad, and I'm wondering, with the limited budget that they had, would the game would have been better off as a straight-up visual novel alternating between the two worlds. As I said, I probably won't play too much more other than picking it up now and then. Time is limited and there are much better games out there that came out in 2023 or even 2022 for that matter, where my limited time would be better spent. So those are the JRPGs that I got to play in 2023, and I realize that that list doesn't include some of the heavy-hitting games that came out this year. And so I do have some of those on my to-play pile, and they'll probably become games that'll list in 2024. So I guess when you're making these kind of lists, you have to pick a number one. And one of my prerequisites is that I actually finish the game. So that rules out Breath of the Wild. So let's not do a big drum roll. My game of the year, and it's actually two games, is the Crossbell Duology. I guess there couldn't be any doubt about that. So anyways, what was your favorite JRPG game of the year? You can leave that in the comments section, or if you had a game from another genre that was your overall number one, go ahead and list that too. Anyways, that's all for now, and I hope you have a happy, safe New Year, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye for now. Hey Loki, what's the matter? Yeah, I guess you didn't exactly work out as clickbait for my other video. Don't think it'll work in this one too. You have a happy New Year too, okay?